In this recording, we're going to assess the view that developing countries cannot afford to worry about the environment. So there are many environmental problems such as global warming, deforestation, desertification, biodiversity, and the overuse of non-renewable resources. One of these is population growth due to overuse of resources. Neo-Malthusians like Ehrlich believe that the Earth's resources cannot sustain present levels of population growth, and poverty is mainly experienced by the developing world. Population growth leads to environmental degradation through more desperate use of resources. The population should be controlled by state policies such as China's one-child policy, which is now ended. However, some argue that the world does have enough resources to cope with present population growth, but if the standard of living rose, then consumption of natural resources would be unsustainable. For example, if we all live like Western society, the environment would be unsustainable. Rees argues that it's the rich world is consuming the resources of the poor, and Marxists like Cohen and Kennedy go even further to say that the throwaway economy created by the consuming class produces vast amounts of toxic waste that may damage the environment. For example, Western waste has been dumped on the Ivory Coast. Also, anti-Malthusians believe that the people who damage the environment the most needs abriding are the wealthiest people, as they consume a far greater share of resources. It's not population that's the basic problem, but consumerism is, and this impacts development as it increases demand for resources. So another environmental issue is industrialization and urbanization. Industrialization and urbanization create air, water and land pollution and uses up natural resources. Urbanization creates water pollution as rapid urbanization results in overcrowding, and urban infrastructures can't cope with the influx of people. Migrants may then settle in makeshift squatter settlements without proper water supply or sanitation. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 billion people had no access to piped water in 2001. Kingsbury says that the pollution of the world's waterways for industrial and food purposes has reduced the amount of clean drinking water that threatens the continuing existence of animal and plant life. Also, industrialization has caused air pollution, as the new International Division of Labour means that polluting heavy is concentrated in developing countries. This is an issue as they don't have the access to clean technology, such as equipment to reduce air pollution from power plants. And finally, economic growth and industrialization, which developing countries are trying to achieve, will cause further environmental degradation if practiced in the same way as the West. For example, China has large supplies of coal despite the consequences of global warming that will accompany this. One possible solution is wealthy countries paying for developing countries' pollution. So TNCs can also be a problem for environmental issues because the pressure to attract investment from TNCs leads to some developing countries to weaken environmental controls. And the use of the best agricultural land by TNCs for cash crop production means that it pushes farmers on to marginal lands such as the edge of forest, and then in turn they use the forest for unsustainable purposes. Some southern environmentalists have accused the North of using environmental concerns as a cover for its own interests, with international agreements that appear fair in practice, but often they are just used so that TNCs can carry about unsustainable practices. For example, Shell is facing 2 claims in the UK due to oil spills in Nigeria, which causes environmental damage as sea creatures will suffer. And also, for every bottle of Coca-Cola, it takes 3 bottles of water to make it, which is a problem if it's taken from an area where there's not much water around. Also, globalization causes environmental damage, as many environmental issues are now seen as being global, but both the causes and the effects are unequally distributed between regions of the world. The consumerist lifestyle of the developed world and its greater energy use and fuel means that it creates and worsens many of the problems. Cohen and Kennedy believe that globalization has led to increasing shared environmental problems. For example, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster demonstrated that ecological disasters do not take national boundaries. And also, green crime can be seen as a form of globalization, as it tends to be carried out by powerful interests, particularly TNCs such as oil and chemical companies, working with the cooperation of nation states and local wealthy elites. Whites believe that green crime should be described as any action that harms the physical environment and any of the creatures that live within it, even if no law has technically been broken. Current laws are inconsistent and that they often differ across different countries and are biased, and that they are too influenced by business with a vested interest in doing harm to the environment because their business is the extraction of raw materials or the exploitation of natural resources. However, the problem with green crime is that it's difficult to police because there are very few international laws governing the state of the environment, and Marxists would argue that many of the laws are shaped by powerful capitalist interests and are not concerned about the environment due to selective law enforcement. We need to strengthen the global institutions in order to prevent green crime. So in terms of theories, neoliberal theory argues that the solution of environmental problem is the expansion of the free market. So neoliberals like Saunders has argued that capitalism may have contributed to environmental problems, but its nature is unpredictable. Business owners need to develop a more environmentally acceptable alternatives. And structuralists would argue that developing world would do more about environmental issues if it was debt-free. As long as the developing world is struggling to catch up economically, then the economy will always take priority over the environment. So in conclusion, all countries need to take responsibility of the environment, and neo-Marxists like Redcliffe believe that sustainable development is the solution. Sustainable development is only needed because development is defined in economic terms and characterized by trading of natural resources for money.